Welcome to MultiPrime Briefings. I'm Matthew, and joining me as always is Ruth. Ruth, big week. Thailand just posted some genuinely eye-popping investment numbers, the ECB held rates, and we have a pile of consulting firm publications all basically saying the same thing about AI in slightly different fonts. Where do you want to start?
Yes. The consulting industry discovered AI returns are disappointing. Film at 11. But let's start with the Thailand number, because I think there's a real story buried under the headline that people are just going to read as good news and move on.
Okay, so the headline, Thailand recorded $43.6 billion in foreign and domestic investment applications in the first half of 2026. That is a 37% year-on-year increase. The Finance Ministry simultaneously upgraded the full-year GDP growth forecast to 2.5%, citing a rebound in private investment and projecting a 12.5% surge in exports. On the face of it, genuinely strong numbers.
Right. And they are strong. But here's what's actually driving it. Hyperscale AI data centers and digital infrastructure. Big tech building server farms. That's the majority of the surge.
Which is not nothing.
No, it's not nothing. It's electricity bills and land. Thailand becomes a landlord.
That's a bit harsh. There are real multiplier effects: construction employment, grid investment, engineering services, local supply chains for the build phase. I don't think it's fair to dismiss it as pure landlord economics.
Fair point on the build phase. But what happens after the ribbon cutting? A hyperscale data center at steady state employs maybe a few hundred highly specialized people, most of whom are not locally trained. It doesn't seed a downstream manufacturing cluster. It doesn't teach a mid-sized Thai manufacturer how to run AI-enhanced operations. The investment application number is genuinely impressive. The question is whether Thailand captures the productivity upside or just the real estate rent.
And that's the crux of the thesis I want to argue this week. Thailand is winning the capital attraction race, the inputs race. Foreign investment flowing in, infrastructure being built. The harder and more consequential race is turning that into output economics, productivity, capability, wages. And the evidence on that front is much more mixed.
Mixed is generous.
Maybe, but look, the Finance Ministry's 2.5% growth forecast is grounded in something real. The first half foreign investment application number was 187 billion baht just in that boy category, and there's a genuine export story building. The 12.5% export projection isn't fantasy.
Okay, walk me through the export story. 12.5% is a big number. Export growth to where exactly, and under what tariff conditions?
That's the legitimate caveat. The projection leans heavily on ASEAN intra-regional demand and, here's where it gets shaky, on U.S. demand, which is still operating under a tariff environment that hasn't stabilized. The EU demand picture is soft. We'll get to the ECB in a minute. So the export optimism is real but concentrated, and the concentration risk is higher than the headline implies.
So the optimistic forecast assumes the geopolitical environment cooperates, the tariff situation cooperates, and energy prices cooperate. Three things the Finance Ministry itself flagged as downside risks in the same announcement.
Correct, and the ministry deserves credit for flagging the risks. But there's an interesting tension in forecasting 2.5% while also saying the conditions for 2.5% are unstable.
Economists being economists.
Always. But here's the second-order effect I think is most underappreciated. The investment surge is predominantly digital infrastructure. The Gulf Edge Cognizant partnership we also saw this week, pairing global AI engineering with local cloud infrastructure to target manufacturing, banking, and government, is exactly the kind of deal that looks great on paper. But there's a pattern emerging where Thailand becomes the location of the infrastructure, and the capability, the actual AI engineering depth, stays offshore with the global partner.
Fine in year 1. It's a problem in year 5.
Exactly. In year 1 you're getting the investment. In year 5 you want to be the one who can do this independently, or at least with deeper local capability. That requires a different set of buoy incentives, not just build here but train here, retain here. The Trusted AI Hub initiative from the Ministry of Digital Economy is pointing in the right direction, but a governance sandbox is not the same as a capability development program.
I want to push back on one thing. You keep framing this as Thailand-specific risk. But isn't this the ASEAN-wide tension? Malaysia is doing the same with data centers. Indonesia with cloud. Every country in the region is racing to attract the iron and hoping the capability follows.
That's a fair pushback, and you're right, it's a regional dynamic. My counter, Thailand's specific position, not as rich as Singapore, more developed than Vietnam, Competing directly with Malaysia for similar investment profiles makes the capability gap question more acute here. Singapore captures the headquarters and the talent. Vietnam captures low-cost manufacturing. Thailand is fighting to own the middle, and the middle requires capability, not just infrastructure.
The value of the middle. Hard place to hold.
Hard place to hold, but absolutely the right strategic ambition. Watch whether we see a second wave of BOI announcements that are explicitly about capability development, training programs, joint R&D requirements attached to data center approvals. That's the signal that the strategy is maturing beyond landlord economics.
I'll believe it when I see it, but I'll watch. Okay, ECB. Rates held at 2.25%, and I think there's more there than nothing changed.
Right. The ECB Governing Council held the deposit facility rate at 2.25% and the main refinancing rate at 2.40%. No surprise, the consensus was a hold. Philip Lane's remarks signaled cautious optimism on inflation trajectory but flagged ongoing energy price volatility and geopolitical risk as reasons not to move. The ECB's professional forecasters survey for Q3 2026 trimmed the euro area growth outlook. Soft demand is the baseline.
So Europe is stuck.
Muddling through is more accurate. But for Thai executives, the relevant implication is clear. The EU demand story is not going to be the engine of that 12.5% export growth forecast. If Thailand is projecting strong exports, it needs to be honest that Europe is not going to be the buyer.
And the ECB climate collateral decision, this one flew under the radar, and I think it's actually significant.
Yes, the ECB announced it's extending climate factors into the Eurosystem collateral framework to cover non-financial corporate credit claims, not just bonds, but credit claims on companies. That means European banks lending to industrial companies will increasingly need to account for climate risk in their collateral assessment. And because supply chains are global, that carbon risk pricing doesn't stop at the EU border.
So a Thai auto parts supplier exporting to a German OEM could find their European bank counterparty repricing credit risk on that relationship because of unverified emissions.
Exactly. This is a slow-moving wave. It won't bite in 2026, but Thai manufacturers with European exposure who haven't started Scope 3 measurement are choosing to have a worse conversation later. The window to get ahead of this is now, while it's still a compliance preparation exercise rather than an immediate financing crisis.
And this connects directly to the Bangkok Post piece on supply chain financing this week. Thai SMEs are already being required to supply verified digital operational records to access green transition loans locally. So it's not just European pressure, it's domestic financing pressure too.
Completely connected. ESG data transparency is moving from a large cap reporting requirement to an SME credit access requirement. If you don't have clean digital operational records, you don't get the green transition loan. That's not gradual, that's a binary switch at the next refinancing. And a lot of Thai SMEs are going to hit that switch without having prepared.
Okay, industry. Virtual banking. Ascend Bank delayed again.
Ascend Bank has pushed its commercial virtual banking launch to later in 2026. The stated reasons are regulatory structure finalization and user experience work. The Bank of Thailand requirement is that virtual banking operations must be strictly separated from the parent group's non-financial businesses, which for Ascend, part of the CP ecosystem, is a genuinely complex structural requirement.
And I'm of two minds on this. The bot requirement is the right call for systemic stability. You don't want credit risk bleeding across from a retail conglomerate into a deposit-taking institution. But the delay has a real cost.
What cost are you pointing to specifically?
The competitive window. There are fully operational virtual banks in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong. The longer Thailand's virtual banks are in regulatory prep mode, the more the regional benchmark moves. When Ascend finally launches, it won't be entering a market with no reference point. It'll be entering a market where the regional standard has already been set by more experienced operators. The catch-up cost rises with every delay.
Real concern. I'd add that the underbanked SME population, arguably the most important target market for virtual banking in Thailand, is not being served in the meantime. Every quarter of delay is a quarter that opportunity isn't captured. That said, I'd rather have a structurally sound launch 6 months late than a structurally compromised one that creates a depositor protection problem in year 2.
Agreed. The bot is right to hold the line, but someone should be honest that right and costless are not the same thing.
Absolutely. Now, Gulf Edge and Cognizant, let's be specific. The combination of local digital infrastructure with Cognizant's AI engineering expertise, targeting manufacturing, banking, and government, is the logical shape of AI deployment in markets that don't yet have enough local engineering depth. You bring in the global capability, pair it with local infrastructure, run deployments. That model works.
In principle, my concern is the press release to deployment ratio in Thai AI partnerships right now. There have been a lot of strategic alliance announcements over the last 18 months. How many have produced measurable workflow changes in specific organizations? That's the question I'd be asking if I were a CFO evaluating whether to engage with any of these partnerships.
The 18-month test is the right frame. Any partnership announced now that cannot point to a specific operational outcome, cost per unit reduced, processing time cut, risk flag accuracy improved, by end 2027 is functionally just a distribution agreement with good PR.
I'm going to quote you on that. Okay, Capability Corner. AI ROI. The number is 59%.
So the Forbes piece synthesizing recent enterprise surveys found that 59% of companies spend more than $1 million annually on AI, but only 29% report substantial returns. That is, and I want to be precise, not a small gap. The majority of enterprise AI investment is not producing the returns that justified the investment.
And I don't find that surprising. At all.
No?
No, because in most of those organizations what happened is, someone in the C-suite saw a demo, got excited, approved a budget, and the implementation team went and plugged an AI tool into the existing process without redesigning the process. You've bought a Formula One engine and put it in a Toyota Camry drivetrain. Of course it's not going faster.
The racing engine and the old gearbox. Exactly. The BCG report this week makes the same point more politely. Workforce readiness, cross-functional governance, and operating model redesign are the primary barriers. Which is true, but there's a harder point they're dancing around.
Say it.
Most organizations have incentive structures that actively punish the cross-functional collaboration that enterprise AI scaling requires. Think about it. You ask a finance function to share data with an operations team to build a planning model. The finance function's KPIs are about control and accuracy, not about enabling operations. Every step of sharing data is a step of reducing their control. The incentive is to cooperate slowly. BCG recommends collaboration but doesn't redesign the incentive that prevents it.
And McKinsey does the same thing in their FP&A agents piece this week, which I actually thought was pretty good on mechanics. AI agents for continuous forecasting, faster scenario modeling, earlier risk flags, all real value propositions. But they assume the organization wants FP&A to have more influence, and in a lot of Thai corporates I've seen, FP&A is not where the power sits.
Right. AI-powered FP&A is a great capability that will be ignored if the decision-making culture doesn't value structured financial analysis over relationship-based judgment. The technology is the easy part. The politics are the hard part.
Always.
Let's talk about Thailand's trusted AI governance sandbox from the Ministry of Digital Economy. The intent is genuinely good. Align real-world AI implementations with ethical principles. Position Thailand as Southeast Asia's trusted AI hub. Protect against digital fraud. But there's a lifecycle problem with government AI governance sandboxes.
They become permanent consultations.
The ones that work. Singapore's Moss Financial Sandbox is the best regional example. Work because they have explicit timelines and exit criteria. You enter the sandbox, you test for a defined period, you get a regulatory decision. The sandboxes that don't work are where sandbox is a metaphor for we're still thinking about it. Thailand's credibility as a trusted AI hub depends on producing actual enforceable standards within 24 months, not a permanent working group.
The digital fraud focus is smart though. Deepfakes, voice cloning for scam calls, synthetic identity fraud. That's where public trust is actually at risk right now. If the sandbox produces fast, concrete action on those use cases, it builds credibility for the broader framework.
Agreed. Start with the most visible harms. Demonstrate that the governance apparatus can move quickly, then extend to more complex questions. Try to solve everything at once and you get a 5-year deliberation with no outputs.
Okay, firms, Bain and OpenAI. This is the one I want to fight about.
Bain has been designated an OpenAI elite partner, among the premier organizations authorized to build, sell, and deploy advanced AI solutions alongside OpenAI. Pre-release access to frontier models combined with Bain's industry expertise to help corporate clients scale AI. Commercially, it's a significant move.
It's a significant commercial move and a significant advisory independence problem dressed up as a partnership announcement.
You think the independence concern is real? Bain would say they're bringing the best available tools to clients.
Of course they'd say that. But think about the client conversation. You hire Bain to do an AI strategy assessment. Bain concludes, surprise, that you should use OpenAI's models. Is that the right answer for your specific situation? Maybe. Is it the answer Bain is now structurally incentivized to give you regardless? Also maybe. Those two maybes are a conflict of interest, and any halfway sophisticated board should be asking about it.
I don't fully disagree, though I'd note that every Big Four firm has technology alliances that create similar dynamics: Deloitte and Microsoft, Accenture, and pretty much everyone. The question is disclosure, not the existence of the partnership.
True, but OpenAI Elite is a different class of relationship than a standard reseller agreement. The degree of strategic alignment, pre-release model access, joint go-to-market, is much tighter. I'd want that disclosed explicitly in any engagement letter.
Agreed on disclosure. And here's the strategic implication I find most interesting. This forces McKinsey and BCG to make a choice. Do they respond with their own Tier 1 AI vendor partnerships, comparable commercial firepower but the same independence questions? Or do they position as vendor agnostic, the advisors who will tell you whether OpenAI is actually the right answer versus Anthropic versus Google versus a fine-tuned open source model? Whichever way each firm goes, it will define their market position for the next 3 to 5 years.
The vendor-agnostic position is more credible to sophisticated clients, but harder to monetize. The partnership model is easier to monetize, but gradually erodes the trust premium consulting firms charge for. Classic independence versus revenue tension.
No obviously right answer, which is exactly why it's interesting. I also want to flag the MGI Global Balance Sheet report briefly. The title, Imbalance and Divergence, captures something real. Global asset imbalances are widening, not converging. Countries that attract productive capital now are widening their balance sheet advantage versus those that don't. Which circles us back to the lead.
The $43.6 billion is balance sheet positioning. The question is whether it lands on the right side of that imbalance.
Exactly. Okay, let's close. Ruth, what are you watching next week?
I'm watching whether any of the Gulf Edge Cognizant deployment announcements produce named client outcomes. Not we have signed agreements, but company X reduced processing time by Y%. I'm watching the bot for any signals on the virtual banking timeline, because the regional competitive pressure is real and it keeps building. And frankly, I'm watching whether any Thai executive this week asks their team what financial metric they're using to prove the AI investment is working, because based on the data, 71% of them can't answer that question.
I'm watching the ECB Climate Collateral Framework rollout and whether Thai industry associations respond proactively or wait until European bank counterparties start flagging it in credit conversations, because by then the conversation is much harder. And I'm watching BOI announcements for any second wave of incentives focused on capability and training rather than just infrastructure attraction. That's the signal that the strategy is maturing beyond landlord economics. It's the number that doesn't get headlines but matters more than $43.6 billion in the long run.
Well said. Thanks everyone for listening to MultiPrime Briefings. I'm Ruth.
And I'm Matthew. Stay sharp out there.